First question, Suggs, is do you feel like a subject or a citizen?
I feel like a citizen, yes. I'm a citizen of my own making, free to do whatever I wish within the confines of an extremely onerous state.
Next question, when should we bomb Iran?
Well, I think we've run out of bombs, haven't we, at the present? Not until we've manufactured some more. Yeah, it's a terrible old state of affairs. I think we're down at the very bottom of the barrel where bomb making is concerned. What's that book that bloke wrote? $3 trillion or something that the USA have spent so far, just in Iraq. $3 trillion. It's a terrible old travesty of justice, isn't it? In the truest sense of the word. And what we're doing now, I've got absolutely no idea. And I think it's no coincidence that Tony Blair's buggered off at the time he had, because someone's going to end up with the right pile of shit on their hands, aren't they, at the end of all this mess?
Next question is a trivia question to test your cultural knowledge. Can you name the owner of The Times, The Sun, Sky News, Sky Sports, MySpace, The London Paper and Fox News?
Would that by any chance be Mr. Rupert Murdoch?
We think it is. We haven't got confirmation, but we think it is. We're still looking into it. Next question is, how do you feel about 1% of the British people owning 70% of the British land?
It's funny, isn't it? Because I just saw in the papers today, fair enough to struggling farmers for the last sort of 10 years or so. I've been hearing about how they've been really struggling and not been getting half the EU grants of all these Spaniards and Portuguese and whatever. And all of a sudden, have you just noticed the coincidence and the downturn of property has gone hand in hand with a huge upturn in the value of farmland, a shortage of food all of a sudden. And it reminds me of those, I think it was the Duke of Westminster, who when they had a Labour government in the just after the war, brought in the idea of taxes on handing down property and land. What were they called, those taxes? They're still here, and I know they are today. The Duke of Westminster just leased his properties for 99 years in the very full knowledge, in the great span of history, as your aristocrat knows, of 14 generations of owning a bit of land, that it would come back to them at a period when it would be less onerous tax-wise. And the same process, all these people moaning about, and they suddenly find out there are still these aristocrats who own 35 trillion acres of land, will own the whole of Norfolk. And now, surprise, surprise, food prices are going up. And what was your original question?
Your answer's taken us in a better direction. The original question, how do you feel about that kind of disparity between sort of just 1% owning 70% of the land?
I think it's dreadful, yeah. I mean, it's something that the Italians and the French sorted out a long time ago. I spent quite a bit of time in Italy, and they split all the land up, and they have these things called contadinos. Every man got his, 4 square acres and a donkey. And it quite literally happened. I mean, it hasn't happened all over, but it's happened in huge swathes of Italy. It's only when it comes up like this that you realise that disparity. And then you always think, that's okay, they only own a bit of farmland, it's not really worth all that, a few fields and hedges. And then you realise, of course, the production of food is, what with water, is the ultimate. Even owning buildings pales into significance when you own the production of food. It's a very unfair process, yes.
The next question is, we're trying to think of an appropriate question to ask the man that reminded us it must be love. And we thought one. Recently, Prince William spent £75,000 of the taxpayers' money flying an RAF Chinook to his girlfriend's house and then onto a stag do. So with that in mind, do you think love and romance is dead, or should it be punished? Any thoughts in any direction?
I think love should always be punished. It only leads to very painful areas. Love's a fabulous thing. It must be love, always. Yeah? Love is the best, in my very limited knowledge of these things. The royal family own the army, don't they? So they can kind of do what they like. And
technically, theirs.
Yes.
A bit of a probing question now, just to get you on the spot a bit. When your personal fortune reaches 2 million, on what will you spend the rest? And why?
I've spent the rest on what was it? Wine, women, and song, and the rest I just frittered away. Yeah, that's a very interesting philosophical question, and one that will take me some time to think about. I don't know.
We'll be back next week demanding answers.
Okay.
Another trivia: which country locks up more of its people than Zimbabwe, China, Saudi Arabia, Syria, or Burma?
The United States of America.
Close.
The UK of England.
The UK of England.
Doesn't it really? Yeah. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's fantastic. Well, they reckon also that the proportion of people being locked up in America, if it carries on at the rate it is, it's only 10 years before half the population are inside and the other half are guards, something like that, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? I was saying to your man, the cameraman, before you arrived, before you came running from the bus, I've just been reading some essays by George Orwell. I just picked them up at a bookshop called Cigarettes versus Books. And it's rather charming because it's all about the fact that, at the time it was written, just after the war, your average man would rather spend, 3 bob on a packet of cigarettes than he would a book. But of course, George was leading towards much greater subjects as we now know, and this was pre-writing 1984. And he was just talking about that, the way it incrementally becomes this way, and here we are, sitting in 1984. One nation under a camera, one nation under CCTV. I mean, how much more clear could what he was writing have become? It was really interesting to read him, and it could just, I know it's one of them cliches, but he could have been writing now. Obviously, he was writing at the end of the war, and he was writing about the huge groundswell in this country for communism in the way that Russia was undergoing communism. But all he was doing was complaining about the way Stalin was killing thousands of people in the process. Not necessarily socialism or the way wealth is divided, but just the idea that bit by bit you take away anyone complaining and in the end no one complains and you suddenly end up surrounded by cameras.